Welcome to the Vine Resources podcast show. Welcome to today's episode of the Vine Resources podcast show. I'm delighted today to have with us Simon Specka. Simon is one of the co-founders and the CEO of ZenMate in Berlin in Germany. Simon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and speaking to you guys.
Simon, can you share a little bit of background about yourself and ZenMate? And I'd also love to share a little bit of the story of how you founded the company 6 years ago.
Yes, very happy to do so. So there's actually an interesting story connected to the UK to it, because I did start a company in the UK. However, the idea came much earlier, because in my bachelor's degree I studied international business administration, and part of this degree was to also live abroad for a while. So I was living in Southeast Asia, and this is where I experienced the annoyance of a restricted internet firsthand. So I was traveling around the countries and I could see that certain websites online are blocked and I couldn't access them, right? And this really annoyed me. So I was thinking of a solution to fix this. And I was tinkering around with various software solutions, and I was also using VPN solutions. So the products that we are building today, but it was actually really difficult to use and clunky to use. So this kind of kept me thinking, right? And then I went to the UK to actually do my master's degree, studied innovation management and entrepreneurship at Manchester University. And while I was at university living in Manchester, I actually founded a company together with my co-founder, and we had our first office in the incubation center of the Manchester University, and also won a small startup competition with the university. So this is kind of how it all started. Back then, this was roughly about 5.5, close to 6 years ago now.
Fantastic. And you're now 6 years old, roughly 30, just over 30 people strong?
Yeah, roughly 35 people. 35 people, mainly here in Berlin.
Brilliant. And your customers are generally, where could they be in the world?
So we actually serve people from more than 160 countries. So we are actually almost present in every country in the world with at least a few users. So our main customers, however, are actually from Germany, United Kingdom, United States, but we are also market leader in Turkey, in South Korea, in Russia, and we are growing quite strongly now in Indonesia as well. And slowly China is picking up, and we are moving slowly into Brazil. So it's a quite international audience, as we have more than 45 million downloads of our software.
Wow, that's amazing. Simon, tell me, what does a typical day in the business look like for you?
So actually the interesting part is that over the last 5-6 years, my average day shifted quite tremendously. So at the very first 1 or 2 years, it was just pure craziness. I got up at 6 or 7 in the morning, and I probably left the office at 1 or 2 at night, right? And this 7 days a week, and I was working like crazy and quite uncoordinated in a way, because this was my first company. I was a first-time founder. And so the same for my co-founder. Same was true for my co-founder. So we just were pushing forward like day and night, right? By now, my day looks a little bit differently. So I usually get up around 6:30 to 7. And the interesting part of my day is, which I just implemented a while ago, I have 1 hour every morning, which is like a personal learning session. And that's not necessarily work related, but I just focus 1 hour every morning right when I get up to do like something in my working room at home, just to grow my skill set, either online marketing related, technology related, or read like a certain book. And then usually around 9, I'm in the office 9:15. And usually I do start with meetings first. So I try to keep all my email backlog to the afternoon when I'm more tired. But I rather do, especially on Monday and Tuesday, I do all my jour fixes with all my manager, my management team. I also have all management meeting usually in the morning or early afternoon, and I usually jump around between teams, either marketing team, product teams, to kind of just fix things that are just coming up, or I dive into projects, or I'll try to have a high-level overview of most of the things, but I also try to pick certain projects where I really dive in deep to really get first-hand knowledge, not only through proxies of people, but first-hand knowledge. And usually in the afternoon and early evening, I try to do more tedious tasks like my email backlog and other things. So that would be a typical task for a day for me. I usually leave the office by now around 7 in the evening, 7 to 8, and I try to go running with my girlfriend around about 2 to 3 times a week, just to get some exercise and some balance.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Can you perhaps name someone who's been an impact to you as a leader? Perhaps someone who's been even a mentor to you, and how they've impacted your life so far?
So when I think about this, it's not easy for me to name one single mentor. I do have a couple of mentors. Some of them actually sit in the board of my company. So we have a board of directors in the company that kind of steer the direction of the company as well. And so one of my mentors actually is also a serial entrepreneur and investment banker who brought a company public at some point, and he's in the board and kind of helping with strategic direction. So there's some profound impact there as well. But I think most important for me is I'm part of an organization called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, around 12,000 members worldwide, I think. And I'm part of that organization here in Berlin, one chapter where we have a forum where we meet once a month to exchange deep knowledge exchange and deep exchange of thoughts and experiences. And this is probably like a strong impact on me as well. So that's not one single mentor, but like a group of people that help each other, so to say. And I would say this is probably a very, very strong force for me.
That's amazing. And so great to share and get those experiences from others as well, even outside of your industry, of course. Tell me about employee engagement, because that's obviously critical to success in the business. What have you been doing in your organization from the top to keep your team engaged?
Yeah, sure. Happy to talk about this. It's actually one of my favorite topics. So I very strongly believe that high employee engagement has to do with having the right culture, and from starting from the leadership to also set the right tone and to set the right culture. I think this is the number one key factor of having high employment engagement. I think it starts with the culture. So the culture I try to implement at ZenMate is a culture of freedom and responsibility. So I try to give people the maximum freedom, the maximum learning environment, to kind of give them an environment where they can grow into the best version of themselves. I think this is extremely important, especially for like the Generation Y, Generation Z kind of workforce, to give them an environment where they can grow and they have the feeling, hey, I come to the company, I create value, so I make the company better every day, but also the environment of the company makes me better every day. So it's a win-win situation, a mutual beneficial relationship. I think in today's workforce, especially with the younger generation, there's no other way around this. So this is also why we place a strong learning focus into the company. So we have certain coaching programs, not on a personal coaching level, but on a skill-based level, right? So that people really feel, okay, let's say I start at ZenMate as a junior SEO manager or a junior performance marketing manager. And then we get external coaches in that are really, really AAA senior players that help to coach the workforce on a skill level. And this kind of culture that is not afraid of also failing, experimenting, having a high degree of freedom, but still the right assistant from a senior level, kind of also creates a situation where I can give people a lot of responsibility in exchange for that freedom, right? Which then helps me again to manage the company in an efficient way. And this is kind of how we try to do it. And combining this with a high degree of transparency to make sure because I always have the feeling if I don't make mistakes as a manager, or I try to keep my mistakes as a minimum, and I act ethically and honestly, then I don't have to be afraid of transparency. And this freedom and responsibility combined with high transparency is usually what keeps our workforce quite engaged.
Simon, thank you for sharing that. Simon, I did mean to ask you as well, tell me a bit about your environment there at the company, because when I speak to many of our German customers, some of the organizations will be looking for native German speakers, but other companies are very much embracing English as the language of choice. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so very happy to do so, because this is actually something we're quite proud of as a company. We have a very international workforce, right? So consider we are still a relatively small company, small team, 35 people, but roughly half of it, maybe even like 60-70% of our workforce are actually international. Right, so we have people from all over Europe, some from Britain, some from Italy. We had people from Spain, France. So it's always changing. Sometimes people stay for a year or two, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, right? But we have people from all over Europe, but especially international people. So we also have people from Brazil, for example, working in our company for a long time. We had people from China as well, a couple of people from China. We have people from Russia, people from Turkey. So really all over the world. And this is something that is extremely important for us, because so there's one benefit, because our headquarters is in Berlin, and Berlin in Germany as the capital is one of the few cities in Germany where as a foreigner you can live quite comfortably even if you don't speak fluent German, right? So I have a couple of colleagues, they don't speak German at all, and they're still, they're 100% fine and totally comfortable in Berlin, because everybody really speaks English here, which is different in some other parts of Germany. So this is definitely a benefit. But to source people and to attract people globally, for us, kind of at the beginning came naturally, because our product is globally, and because people were using our product in all parts of the world. They slowly started to apply at the company, right? Said, hey, I'm using your product, I'm from Russia, don't you guys have like a job or a job offering, right? So and this is kind of how we started, and then we realized, oh wow, we can really attract like the best talent globally, and we shouldn't limit ourselves to like the local workforce, right? And this is also paramount today, because there's very, very high competition in the tech workforce in Berlin, and we couldn't actually staff all the positions that we have if we would only source locally. And then, but one challenge was obviously to build in the company not a German culture, but like a more meta, high-level international culture, right? That's independent from cultural norms, religion, certain local belief system. So this is why I'm also placing such a great emphasis on building the right culture, because in an international team setting, you really have to also build a culture that everybody can embrace. And so that's a little bit the challenge, but also huge benefits from sourcing internationally, right? So
fantastic. I'd love to come for your cooking or dinner evenings, because I'm sure there's such a diverse range of food on offer.
Please do so. We actually have a nice kitchen, and people are cooking quite
fantastic.
Frequently,
yeah. Simon, thanks for that. What do you believe is the biggest challenge facing business leaders today?
So it kind of connects and ties into the last question that you had. I can only speak for myself and from my circle of friends and the people I exchange thoughts with. But one thing I hear again and again is attracting the right talent, right? Attracting AAA talent, sourcing the people globally, managing to build like a very, very strong employer brand. But then, even if you build a great employer brand, all the other companies are slowly starting to realize this as well. So competition to get the right talent already is somewhat globally, and companies compete with other companies on a global scale, especially in the tech industry, I feel. So there's a slight location advantage. Obviously, Silicon Valley has a great advantage because it's still a magnet to attract people. London has certainly one, Berlin in Germany has certainly one, right? But then all these companies, they notice and they push like the brand of the firm already, and then you start to compete somewhat on salary, but also especially on the company benefits, right? And like the work environment. So really gotta keep up. On the other side, I always think this is also a good challenge for a manager, because it forces you as a manager to think, innovative, to like think forward, to also as a manager you're forced to become the best version of yourself, because if you won't transmit that knowledge and intelligence to the company, and thus you won't have the culture that attracts people, right? So it really also pushes you as a manager to really become the best version of yourself, and in order to build the best company the company can be, right? So this is definitely what I see as the biggest challenge, attracting the right talent.
When you've attracted that talent, and for your existing staff of over 30 people, how do you help a new employee understand the culture at your company?
So what we usually do, we are actually having a culture guidebook, right? So there's a long presentation, roughly 30 slides, that just talk about the values that we have, that lists the values, and that explain the values. But then there's another 60, 70 slides that also talk about the management system that we have in the company, and that's kind of a guideline and guidebook for managers, and also like a guidebook for employees, right? So, and what we usually do is, before people start in the application process, they are tasked with reading this entire guidebook, right? So they kind of really understand, okay, what are the values, but also what are the rules and the norms that I have to kind of follow through in the company. And then every time after 3 to 4 weeks, I personally, as a founder and the CEO, I usually do like a cultural onboarding session of 1.5 hours, where I just get all new employees in a room, and we just have an open discussion, and like it's a mix of a presentation from my side and an open discussion with the team. What does our culture mean applied in the daily work, right? And this is kind of what we do, which usually works quite nicely for us.
Fantastic. If there was one mistake that you witness leaders making more frequently than others, what do you believe that is, in your opinion?
For me, I often see that people underestimate that the best ideas can emerge independent from position, seniority, or knowledge level, right? Because finding an innovative solution to unsolved problems is not necessarily tied to a job description. And so sometimes I think some leaders make the mistake of saying, okay, the best ideas can only come from that person or that person or that person. But I've seen in the company, if you observe very carefully as a leader the entire organization, I've seen that great ideas can basically come from every person in the company. And you just got to observe it and then make sure it is flourishing.
If there was one particular behaviour trait that you've recognised that has derailed more leaders' careers, again, in your opinion, what would that be?
One behavior trait. So difficult for me. I can't name one explicit one. I think I've seen a couple of tendencies, right? People being like ignorant to certain talent or certain bright ideas coming from certain areas, but I couldn't name one explicit one that I said this is the one that really derails everybody.
How do you now see your industry changing over the next couple of years, and then also how do you think that will also affect your ability to attract and hire the best talent?
So what we can clearly observe is that our industry is also growing up. So the VPN industry is still a relatively, or the consumer VPN industry is still a relatively young industry, right? Now it's roughly 10 years old. It became really popular. It started about 10 years ago, became really popular about 7 to 8 years ago. That's when it picked up. We entered the market about 6 years ago, still on a strong upward slope. And slowly the industry is moving to a mass market, right? And if you observe the other end consumer security industry, let's say antivirus industry, that industry is slowly hitting a plateau, right? And is looking for new areas to grow. So there's slowly a consolidation play happening, and the antivirus industry is slowly also buying up some players in the market, which then gives these competitors in the market more financial resources, right? So the race for talent is slowly increasing, and this is definitely a trend that I can see on the horizon, that a slow consolidation play in the VPN industry is happening now.
If you had your time again and were giving your 20-year-old self advice, what's the one thing that you would say to yourself?
I probably would recommend myself to try to find my passion as early as possible, and then to pick my fights. So kind of saying, okay, try to find what are you passionate about, what's the key thing I'm extremely passionate about, and then double down on it. I think because I think success in life has a lot to do with focus, and the ability to focus on one thing has a lot to do with passion. So I think this is kind of where I would push myself towards to.
Fantastic. And I did mean to ask you, Simon, is there a story behind the name?
Yes, there actually is, right? So when I was traveling in Southeast Asia, I started with a meditation practice called Vipassana meditation. And I actually continued to do so when I was living in Britain, in Manchester. I went to a couple of meditation retreats. And so when my co-founder and myself, we were looking for a right name for the company, we said, okay, we thought about this, the word Zen, right, from the Buddhism Zen. We said, okay, the Zen is a symbol of, being in balance and being protected and being not concerned about things, but being in balance, and mate as the British friend, right? So that ZenMate, your friend that helps you, to keep balance and to be protected online without worry. That's kind of the idea behind the name.
Fantastic. It's really great to hear the story. Simon, thank you so much for sharing that with us. What's the best way that people can connect in with you, reach out to the company?
So there are two ways. If people are, would like to do inquiries about the company, we have a support email address. They can just go to the website zenmate.com and write our support team, and usually they just forward it directly to me. Or this is one way. If people want to reach out to me personally, best way to connect with me would be via LinkedIn, actually. So I have an open LinkedIn profile. People can find me there. As the ZenMate CEO, I'm easily findable, Simon Specka. So I'm happy to answer questions there.
Simon, thanks so much for joining us, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you guys.